Hello, and welcome to the first part of our quick training series to help prepare you for the Foundation's October Month of Action. My name is Chelsea Fix, and I am joined by Philip Goglis from the Health and Medicine Council of Washington. And together, we will walk you through some of the most important need-to-know information to prepare for Month of Advocacy Action. A quick thank you to our sponsor of our Month of Action, Takeda. Now, a very sincere thank you for being here and taking the first step of participating in Month of Action. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of how to do advocacy, I wanted to highlight a few key points. First, and most importantly, is that sharing your story is the key to advocacy. By using your voice and your own words, you are doing the most important part of advocacy. Your story and your experience matters. And sharing that story with key decision makers is what can help us come together to make meaningful changes for the community. So remember, if all else fails, just tell your story. But also know that the Foundation is here to support you every step of the way. Do not hesitate to send an email to me with any questions, and I will be happy to help. So, a quick reminder of what the Advocacy Month of Action entails for volunteers. Really, we've broken it out into 3 key steps. First, training, and that's what we're doing right now. Then, once you feel confident about advocating and sharing your story, the second step is to find your representative's or senator's office that is local to you and ask if they have time for a phone meeting. We'll show you how to get that information in a later video and also talk about what to do if you can't get a phone meeting scheduled. And then finally, the third step will be to reach out to the official DC office of your representative and senators and send them an email recapping the phone meeting you had with the local office. And remember, the Foundation is here to support you every step of the way. If you have questions or get stuck, send me an email and we will troubleshoot this together. Now, I'm happy to let Philip Goglis from Health and Medicine Council give an overview of the government, which for most of us is going to be a quick review of Civics 101. Phil?
Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you to everybody who has joined us to watch this first video and all of you who are participating in our month of action. As Chelsea mentioned, I'm Phil Goglis. I'm with the Health and Medicine Council. I work here in Washington on behalf of the Foundation, and it truly is an honor and pleasure to be here with all of you. First, as Chelsea mentioned, want to go through a little Civics 101, go back to 4th or 5th grade, Schoolhouse Rock, and just quickly review how the federal government works. You have the executive branch, which is the administration. They enforce the laws. You have the judicial branch, which are the courts, and they interpret the laws. And then you have the legislative branch, which federally is Congress, and they're the ones who create and enact laws. So why do we advocate with Congress? First, Congress has the power of the purse. That means that they decide on an annual basis how much each federal agency receives in funding. We'll hear a little bit more in our subsequent videos about why this is important for our legislative priorities. Congress also has the power to create policy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well later on. And then they have oversight of federal agencies, which allows them to be involved and to direct federal agencies to focus on specific programs or activities. So let's do a quick review of Congress. First, you have the United States Senate. The Senate is comprised of 100 members, 2 members from each state. It doesn't matter if you're a large population state such as California or a small population state such as Delaware. Both states have the same amount of senators too. So there are 100 senators in total, and the Senate is, each senator, has a 6-year term, meaning that every time there is an election, such as this year, only 1/3 of the Senate is up for election at a time. Now, the House of Representatives, on the other hand, is comprised of 435 members from individual districts. This is where population does make a difference. In states such as California, you'll have about 53 individual members of the House of Representatives, but if you're from a small population state such as Montana, or the Dakotas, you only have one member of the House of Representatives for the entire state. The House of Representatives is up for re-election every 2 years, so the entire House this year is up for election. Now, some key committees that we work with on the House and Senate side. First, in the Senate, you have the Appropriations Committee. They are senators who decide how much each federal agency is funded at. They also have a key role in one of our priorities, specifically at the Department of Defense, that we'll talk about a little later as well. You also have the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, which appropriately is the HELP Committee, and that committee has jurisdiction over health-related agencies, as well as advancing key health programs and policies. You then have the Senate Finance Committee, which serves as the major tax writing committee on the Senate side. They have oversight over Medicare, Medicaid, other health programs and policies, and also have an important role to play in any health bill that comes forward. On the House side, you also have the Appropriations Committee. House appropriators, similar to their Senate counterparts, decide how much each federal agency receives in funding on an annual basis. You then have the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is the complement to the Senate Help Committee. The Energy and Commerce Committee has oversight over federal healthcare agencies, as well as advancing key healthcare related policy priorities. You also have the Ways and Means Committee, which is a complement to the Senate Finance Committee. They have oversight over Medicare and Medicaid issues, tax issues, and also play an important role in advancing healthcare policy. In order for a bill to become a law, it must first be introduced by the House and the Senate. After it's introduced by the House and Senate, it works its way through the individual committee process, and it must pass then the House and the Senate before it's signed by the President. The process applies to all bills, whether they be appropriation bills that are must pass, that have to be done every single year, or different health related bills that get introduced to address a specific problem. We'll cover these different types of bills later on as well. Finally, legislators consider feedback from their constituents as they support and prioritize specific efforts. This is critically important why we advocate to ensure that members of the House and Senate truly understand why it's important that they support our priorities. Next, we're going to talk about some key federal healthcare agencies that we work with and the relationship with Congress. As we mentioned earlier, Congress has the ability to decide how much each of these federal agencies receives in funding every year, and also provide specific recommendations on programs that they want, through their oversight, these agencies to follow and to report back on. We have first the National Institutes of Health, which is the premier federal medical research agency. We work very closely with them to advance our research portfolios, specifically working through the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, as well as the National Institute on Allergy and Infectious Diseases. We have a great working relationship with both institutes and NIH overall, and we work with them to make sure that they hear the voice of the patient and what's critically important for the community when they decide which research projects to fund and to advance. Next, we have the Food and Drug Administration, which has oversight over treatments and approves drugs and different therapies. We work very closely with them as well to make sure that they have the voice of our community, the voice of the patient, and that what they are prioritizing is beneficial for our community. And finally, we have the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which have oversight and work on specific policies related to coverage for Medicare and Medicaid recipients. We work very closely with CMS as well to ensure that they understand the patient perspective and are truly advancing priorities that are beneficial to our community.
So this slide is a quick reminder that the most important job of an advocacy volunteer is to share your story. That is the most authentic way for members of Congress to learn about the GBS-CIDP and other related conditions, and that can only come from you. Also, there is strength in numbers. By sharing your story with lawmakers, you are adding to a collective voice about GBS-CIDP and related conditions that eventually can't be ignored any longer. In addition to sharing your story, the Foundation outlines specific asks for Congress, but we will always be here to help you make those asks at the right time. In our later video, we'll tell you about our asks for the month of action, but for now, your job is to feel confident about sharing your story with lawmakers and brushing off any flubs. In conclusion, as a quick summary, there are 3 branches of government, and we focus on advocating to members of Congress who are elected by you and require your input to make laws that are meaningful to the community. That concludes our Civics 101 refresher. A huge thank you to Phil for all of that great information. The next training video will outline the steps to find and contact our members of Congress, so be sure to watch. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you for participating in our month of action.